Today, the university announced in consultation with the health unit that students living in residence in the fall of 2021 will require at least one shot of the COVID vaccine.
As part of our planning for a full return to fall in-person classes and on-campus experiences, we're looking to prioritize the health and safety of our campus community.
It was only until I started removing my mask in the classroom that they decided that they needed to post special constables outside my classroom to prohibit me from entering the classes that I was required to attend and that I had paid for.
I honestly really appreciate the steps that Western's taking.
One of the first days, all the teachers told us, if you do not get vaccinated, you will be expelled.
There was an informant for the university admins, and us announcing this event on campus made its way to the special constables, so they were able to respond much more promptly. It didn't take long, did it?
Warning, censorship.
With Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini, about to get the latest update from a university student who has not only been expelled by his university, but has also been arrested and dragged out of his classroom by special constables who are simply doing the dirty work of the COVID regime. Some of you may already be familiar with Harry Wade's powerful classroom arrest that went viral early in November as he took a moral stand against the indiscriminate vaccine and mask mandate policies at his university. That's the University of Western in London, Ontario. But we have a shocking, never-before-seen update to provide to you. Harry is now being charged criminally for the egregious act of trying to engage in conversation with his peers and get clarification on how the general population at his university felt and get their thoughts on his treatment in simply trying to access the very institution that he pays for. Before we get into the arrest and subsequent charges against Harry, I ask him to provide contextual background of his story and describe how he ended up at this point in history. Here is second-year civil engineering student Harry Wade.
So over the course of the last 2 months, since I enrolled at the university and have been present on campus every day when I was required to, I was receiving routine threats from the campus for not providing my vaccination status, and that if I didn't provide it up until a certain date, which was October 12th, that I'd be barred from campus premises and I'd be trespassed against. But they didn't make a difference on the day, and I was still able to attend campus up until the first arrest was made on November 9th, I believe. It was only until I started removing my mask in the classroom that they decided that they needed to post special constables outside my classroom to prohibit me from entering the classes that I was required to attend and that I had paid for. So the vaccine, providing vaccination status is why they barred me from the university, but refusing to wear the mask is why they arrested me. So my first year was actually in 2018. I had a really successful year. I qualified for chemical biomedical engineering in my second year. But in 2020, I wasn't happy with the way the university was reacting to the outbreak of COVID. And I wasn't content with the program beforehand. And when students were told to write their exams at home, where I knew many of them were congregating and writing them as a collaborative effort, I wasn't satisfied with completing a portion of my education while other students in this competitive field had a significant advantage over me. So I withdrew, and I didn't return for a year because I didn't want to be paying for the same standard of education for online schooling. But when I saw things were taking a turn for the worse and the culture wasn't shifting, I decided I needed to return and face an uphill battle. So I picked a simpler discipline like civil engineering.
Now, of course, there was a lot of speculation there in your videos that went viral of why no one around you did anything while you're being arrested. And again, completely peaceful civil disobedience, providing, opposition to these heavy-handed, one-sided mandates. Can you speak on why that may be that no one stood up?
I think it's for the same reason that you'll see in the interviews I was trying to conduct that resulted in the fourth arrest.
Stand up.
please. I'm not going to comply.
Okay, well, you're under arrest. We're going to put you in handcuffs. I don't want you to get hurt.
Sure.
Sir,
Put me in handcuffs. I can agree to that.
what you're doing is...
Actually, I have my other meds in my room. I'm not even drunk.
These students are our future. We need people to question the science.
Okay. Well, please cooperate. He doesn't want to cooperate. He's ready back in.
It didn't take long, did it? I wonder who said something.
Sub 20? Sub 20 minutes?
20 minutes. Well, Peter, good luck to you. I hope you get more student perspectives. And I hope this will bring more people on camera to talk about it.
Sir, why don't you stand up so you're not getting your pants wet? Nope.
It's all wet. You're getting wet.
Come on.
Students are reluctant to express their opinions, and they're very closed and concealed about how they really think about a variety of issues. And this is especially true in some of the classrooms I was enrolled in on campus, where we were encouraged to have open debate about different environmental issues and Native American issues. And students were reluctant to speak on these issues. One, to not be at odds with their instructors or their peers, and two, because they knew that their opinions could potentially impact their grades. So most students, including myself, wouldn't volunteer that information or their opinions until they were required to, and there was a roll call to force students to provide their opinions on these issues. So you get this very fabricated opinion on issues when students are under a microscope and being graded for it. And it's the same thing with students when I try and reach out to them on campus and invite them to speak on camera about how they really feel. And what I find is that they're very undecided on the issue, just like all the students that in that room that day that were totally apathetic, even though up until that point, I know some of them, at least a third of them in the room, are non-compliant and support my actions, but expect me to solve this problem for them, which is the situation I find myself in now. This is my fourth arrest. I think if every student on campus that felt the way I did allowed themselves to be arrested once, we'd be a lot more further along in this fight and changing the narrative and pulling back these discriminatory mandates and violations of our civil liberties.
Mm-hmm. Give me some context on this fourth arrest now that you've sort of touched on it, because so you had already been arrested 3 previous times from your classroom, and now this fourth time you wanted to essentially, what we discussed off camera, was seek some clarification in terms of what the landscape was like for other students in regards to how you were being treated. So tell us a bit more about what prompted you to go back to campus, and then of course how you ended up being arrested.
So after my first 2 arrests in the same classroom, I decided that my peers had made their decision and they don't want to help me. And that's fine. That's all I wanted to know up until my first arrest, before I knew I was going to go viral and my story would be international news. So I decided that my efforts could be better spent elsewhere, but otherwise I was entirely committed to attending my classes like I'm entitled to, even if that resulted in me spending time in a jail cell, because I don't know what else is going to bring attention to these issues for these students. But when I saw the CTV News London story they did on me, and they interviewed 2 female students on campus,
I honestly really appreciate the steps that Western's taking.
Allison Gokan is also studying engineering at Western and says a friend was in the same class as Wade.
I think it makes the profs feel safer and everyone else, and I know it's a concern for a lot of people health-wise, so I like that we're taking all the measures we can to stay safe.
Farnat Syed is an international student from Saudi Arabia in her first year studying engineering. She says the messaging from the university has been clear.
One of the first days, all the teachers told us, if you do not get vaccinated, you will be expelled.
A lot of the reaction was less about what I had to say and more to do with the 2 students stating that they felt safer that I was no longer on campus and they were glad the university took these steps to remove me. And I didn't believe that. I have a strong opinion that the journalists probably had to interview a good amount of students until they found someone that was willing to say something that would have correlated with the narrative and the stance of the university. So I asked my collaborators if they were willing to bring a documentarian on campus and see if anyone would be willing to come on camera with me and voice their opinions. And I received a lot of support from that. I was in a UWO group full of students that are against these mandates. These are 200 students. So at least most of them are probably vaccinated themselves. If not, they're deferring or they've been delisted, like the 28 students on campus. That's the figure I've been quoted. And they said they were going to come on campus and meet me and have these open discussions on campus so that hopefully people on all sides of the issue can voice their opinion, because I'm not here to perpetuate a narrative. I just want an accurate picture of how the students really feel, which was the same reason why I wanted to be arrested in class. I just wanted to know if the students thought this was acceptable, and they do. So I have to find a way to fight this in a different theater. But what we discovered that it only took about 20 minutes for the special constables to arrive. And there were fears within the student group that we invited to come out and speak with me. And those fears were warranted because it was confirmed afterwards that there was a mole in this student group. There was an informant for the university admins, and us announcing this event on campus made its way to the special constables. So they were able to respond much more promptly than when the university professor was calling to the police directly themselves. So it was really unfortunate to see that they were willing to make an example of someone that wasn't doing anything different from the other people that were protesting this issue and documenting it on campus. They only chose to charge me with criminal mischief because of how much attention I brought to this issue. But fortunately, my other collaborators were allowed to carry on, and we have footage of that, and we hope to circulate that. And hopefully that may change some minds for some people.
Yeah, and we will be circulating that footage. Tell me a little bit about your choice during the arrest to not walk on your own, and what you were met with, what that dialogue was like with the special constables.
That was a spontaneous decision I had to make during my second arrest, because I think the special constables learned that handcuffing students in classroom provides a very adverse reaction from the community at large. So they're very reluctant to put handcuffs on me now, but I can't be perceived as being complicit. And if they're not willing to handcuff me, then they're going to have to carry me, because that's the ultimatum I provide to them. Because what they told me behind closed doors is that special constables reserve the right to handcuff me if they believe I pose a danger to themselves or anyone else. But that's totally contradictory to the substantiation of the suspension and eventually the expulsion. Because the narrative being pushed is that I am a danger, I'm a vector for disease, and if there's a potential for me to spread disease, then I am a danger to everyone else, and they should be handcuffing me. But if the special constables don't believe I'm a threat, then I don't understand why I'm being suspended and expelled and barred from my classrooms.
Harry, you've since obviously been expelled from your program. You're facing criminal charges. What does the future look like for you?
Well, for right now, I have excellent representation. There's a lot of backing, and everyone wants to contribute their resources, their time, and expertise. There's a lot of trials going on that are losing and setting bad precedents and bad law, because the court of public opinion thinks that they are permitted to do this, that they are allowed to bar frontline workers that have been protecting us since the beginning, are allowed to be barred from protecting us now. And there's a labor shortage, not because of anything to do with the pandemic, but because people are being restricted from the jobs that we've been working up until this point.
Harry is being charged with criminal mischief and will now find himself in court on December 16th. He wonders, will they make an example out of him or dismiss the questionably justified charge? If we move forward on this path of ostracization of any and all dissidents, if we lose on this, then all we'll have left from the bottom up will be those compliant cowards that stood there and did nothing, those too scared to stand up and lead the way. We will be a world of followers, falling in line like cowardly slaves. Next time you see something that seems wrong, that is not justified, that is overreaching or maybe too forceful, will you stand up or will you sit idly by? For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. We have initiated a massive legal undertaking at fightvaccinepassports.com. The basis is self-explanatory: fight indiscriminate vaccine mandates and bring in a more balanced, reasonable approach. And if you can help donate to fund legal defense for individuals faced with unreasonable termination, maybe to help fight against the discrimination being imposed on people simply trying to partake in aspects of society that enriches their quality of life, then please consider donating at fightvaccinepassports.com. Your donation goes directly to the registered Canadian charity called the Democracy Fund, who we crowdfund for, and so you will get a charitable receipt for your donation that you can claim for taxation purposes. That website again is fightvaccinepassports.com.